Okay, we're back, and we're now going to introduce the interrelationship of Zechariah. First, we got to go back again and remember where we are on the time map. We're also going to, Zechariah leads us into Psalm 90, so I got to cover Zechariah first. All Bible prophecy is so intertwined, it had to come from God. Only God could keep track of all this so well. 21st of the 7th month, second year of Darius the Great, who's going to end up, saying, yes, build the temple, okay? That's the 21st of the 7th month. They don't know he's going to do that yet. You've seen that. And the next that we had covered in Haggai was the 24th of the 9th month, okay? And that's a bookend, see? We got 24th of the 9th month here. And he's reminding them of the temple, 24th of the 9th month. I'm going to bless you from now on. You can start planting in the season. Our planting's supposed to be over, therefore advertising that God is in this, therefore advertising that God wants that temple built. Okay? He's going to honor even a whole nation, even Darius' kingdom, just because Darius says, yes, build the temple. Doesn't matter if there's anything else good about Darius. And really, Darius, you never know if Darius, you can tell he believed, but did he ever grow up spiritually? Doesn't look like it. Okay, I mean, I could go into Darius, the historical figure in some detail, and he made some pretty stupid decisions. But this was a good one, and his whole nation, the whole Persia, which became the whole Middle East, was blessed because of it. Okay, so look, 24th of the 9th month versus 21st of the 7th month. So about 2 months afterwards, Haggai comes again twice. Okay, this is him talking to, this bookend here is him talking to the priests. Then he's separate. This is really important to understand Zechariah, because there's been a lot of misinterpretation of Zechariah. Okay, that's a bookend, all happening to the priests on that day. Then the word of the Lord comes a second time. In other words, he gives his message, goes away, and comes back. I don't know how far he goes away. Maybe, takes a break. But he comes separately to Zerubbabel and says, hi, you're going to be the seed of Christ, who's going to be born on the anniversary of, from this day onward, which means starting at sundown, the 24th day of the 9th month, which in Jewish culture is the 25th. Okay, so you got that now. This is the 9th month, 2 months after this. Okay? And we talked about how now that Zerubbabel is governor of Judah, obviously they got the approval letter from Darius at that point. Okay? He's not called the governor of Judah again until this point. Now, in between is our boy Zechariah. Now look. Zechariah comes in the 8th month. Okay? The 8th month. So he's coming before this announcement. See? This whole announcement is going to come after this. Zechariah's in between. So they do not know of Darius' approval here. But they do know of it here. See, this is a sign. When he changes the weather, that's going to be a sign to Darius. And people commonly interpreted weather as being an act of God. We even call it that way in modern insurance policies today. Disaster or other acts of God. That's standard wording in insurance contracts. All right? The first thing, when you saw Hurricane Katrina, the first thing you think of is God is judging. It's just natural, it's instinctive, And, that's the way people think about it. So that was the message being sent by changing the weather. Shaking the heavens. Okay? Shaking the heavens. We saw the shaking of the heavens with the angels. Now we're going to see another version of it. 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius. See, it's right between. It's a month before, or maybe not even a month before. Okay? That. In the 8th month, in between, Zechariah gets a message from God. Not Haggai. This is Zechariah. God likes to double up on his prophets. Idea of 2 witnesses. And that's going to be real important to this passage. In the 8th month, God says, I was angry. Return to me and I'll return to you. Do not be like your fathers. This message here introduces a tie to both Psalm 90 and to Daniel 9. What is the chief component of Daniel 9's prayer through verse 19? We didn't listen to your voice. Daniel takes about 11 different ways. He says the same thing. We didn't listen. They didn't listen. He slightly varies the indictment in every verse because he's focusing on certain specifics related to the time period he's covering. Okay, because like I said, it's metered, and therefore each syllable stands for 1 year, and therefore it's an indictment that is spanning from the first David to Daniel's own time. This is incorporating all of that, as well as Psalm 90, as we're going to see the Psalm 90 part. Okay, later, hopefully in this video. So he's shuv. It's the most important word in Judaism. Shuv, return to the land, return to God. Right of return. That's the big dispute that's going on in Judaism now. The Palestinians are trying to assert a right of return to a land that never belonged to them. Okay, so return is like almost the number one key word in Judaism. Okay, return, shuv. Okay, God is telling Zechariah, don't do what your fathers did. In other words, they needed more bucking up. Okay, they got the buck up just to, it doesn't say when in the 8th month. This was the 21st of the 7th month when he was doing the bucking up. Okay? That was just after Booths. Now in the 8th month, there's no holiday. In the 8th month, he's warning them, don't do like your fathers did. All right? So you want to do this thing. And that's what they did do. Or he's telling them to do. Telling them to think that way. Which they obviously did, because now he skips it. And look at this. Oh, God, I almost fell over. Here's the 24th of the 9th month. 2 months after that. He got it in the middle between the 29th, the 24th of the 9th month and the 3rd week of the 7th month. Now, exactly 2 months to the day, 60 days, after he told Zerubbabel he's going to be the seed of Christ, still the 2nd year of Darius, almost at the end of the year, God comes again. And this is the famous prophecy of the 4 horsemen. Okay? Now, it doesn't mention all the horsemen. We see this in, Revelation 6. Okay? The idea of judging the nations for anti-Semitism is primary. Okay? With the red sorrel's a kind of brown, and white horse behind him. Okay? So, there's more than one red horse, unless the translation's off, and I forget. I'm not going to look it up right now. There might be a mistranslation in here. Okay? I want to get across the point, because I can't keep doing these detours. These are the judges that patrol the earth. It's a personification. Horses generally mean that they're coming from a sovereign, an army, coming from somebody with authority, who has authority. People, because you had to have money to have a horse, a particular horse, because they're expensive. Even now, it costs you about $10,000 a year to maintain a horse, just in hay and vet bills. Okay? So, he's talking about, official judgment. Okay, myrtle trees. Myrtle is a symbol of Israel. So God is standing in the myrtle trees. God is protecting Israel. Now, everything I'm saying about this is pretty standard theology, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. What I do want to spend time on is the timing of it. It's 2 months after he's changed the weather, and he's told Zerubbabel he's going to be the seed. This is obviously to let him know that all world history, just like he said before, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth, all world history is going to be impacted. We just saw from Daniel 11, which they all knew, okay, that the angels were fighting over Persia, and so much so that they had a sort of hoplite-like deal where it had to be one angel against another angel, and a second angel could come in only as a relief for the first. Now, how they fought, I'm not sure. Okay, obviously there's physical fighting that goes on, but how they do it, I don't know. Okay, we've got a lot of movies that guess at it, and I'm not sure how those movies, how inaccurate those movies are. The point is that they fight. The point is that shakes the heavens too. The point is that he's advertising a different kind of shaking up the earth now, of judgment for those who judge Israel. Okay? But here's what I want to get to. How long will you have no compassion with whom you have been indignant these 70 years? One of the problems you got when you're interpreting Bible is the phraseology is often broad, because it's dealing on multiple levels all at once in a certain intricate connection. It's not that you can interpret the Bible many different ways. They are all the same interpretation. They're different facets of the same interpretation. Bible is always consistent. It is never contradictory. So you can't have an interpretation that is contradictory. It'll have to be faceted. So if you think you got a contradiction, and here we're looking at a chronology contradiction, if you think you got a contradiction, then you got the wrong interpretation. Keep working on your interpretation till you find one that fits. Okay, so here's the one that fits. A lot of people, when they look at this, they're going to look at the time Zechariah was talking, and we already know when that was. The 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius. And this, okay, is the 11th month, 24th day of the 11th month, still in the 2nd year of Darius. Okay, so that's 522, 521 BC. Okay, Israel has not been in captivity for 70 years at that point. Okay, she has not been. All right? So this 70-year reference point is not talking about 586 to 521. All right? See, here's my little calculator. 586 minus, let's say, 521 to give it the benefit of the doubt. That's only 65 years, not 70. Okay, well, now you have to go back to the time of the deportations. Daniel was taken in 607. That's also not in view, because 607 minus 521 is 86. Or if you say 522, it's 85. That's not it either. What is it? Well, let's say 521, because we're going to have to do a range, plus 70. That's a deportation. That happens to be, I want to say it's Ezekiel's deportation. I'll have to look it up. It's either Ezekiel or Jeconiah. Okay? when there were several deportations that occurred. Daniel was only the first group of deportations. So he's counting from a specific deportation. It's probably Jeconiah. Okay? Because Jeconiah was king when Jeconiah was taken out. Alright? I'm going to have to look that up and I'll fine-tune that. But it is not talking about the destruction of the temple. It's talking about before that. Because it was with the announcement, that's why I think it's Jeconiah. It was with the announcement of Jeconiah's curse that the doom was sealed. The fact that this was going to happen, period, was announced when Manasseh was king, and I covered that in my Isaiah 53 videos, especially in the Daniel passage where I show the meter, because Daniel meters to Manasseh. But this is not talking about 70 years from the time the temple went down. Okay, be real clear on that. It's a different measuring period. Okay, that's the first layer of interpretation. The next layer of interpretation is that this is prospective, viewing the 70 years as about to be completed. Okay, because at the time he's talking, they're just starting to rebuild. And what he's trying to do is give them encouragement. And it's after the time when they know that they've got the permission. Okay, so he's reminding them of the Jeremiah 25:29 promise, especially in Jeremiah 25, well, actually both chapters, where he says, I'm going to return you after 70 years. So he's reminding him through this like mock conversation with an angel of the Lord, all right, which is a vision, of course, that he's giving to Zechariah, all right. He's reminding him that the time limit is coming up. That's why he bugged him to start rebuilding, because the 70 years is going to come up. Now notice something. If you apply it backwards, you got the 70 years going to the deportation, and that has one layer of meaning. If you apply it forwards, then that's encouragement to the 70-year deadline of 516, which they will meet. That has a different meaning, and both meanings are apt. They are not contradictory. They apply to two different accountings. Okay, and there's another meaning to it, but I'm almost afraid to say it because this is not known in Christendom. The whole time period that Israel is out, that God is using, is 140 years, not just 70. I explain that at length in my web pages. I'll put a link in the sidebar so you can look at it, but it'll take you at least a year to vet that material because it's not known in Christendom. The meter proves it, and so do many Bible verses, but it'll take forever to figure it out because nobody's I can't find anybody who's learned it. Jews clearly used to know, but nobody in modern Judaism seems to know. Okay, they have the vague idea of the 2000. That's all that survives of this that I can find in modern Judaism. Okay, so the Lord answered the angel with gracious, comforting words. That's a comfort. Backwards, the judgment from the second deportation when Jeconiah was taken, probably. And forwards to the deadline coming up in 516, which is why God was bugging them to build. So this is a buck up. This is a buck up. Hi, you now got your permission from Darius. You're 2 months later into the thing. Don't forget. Don't do what your fathers did. Okay? I am going to judge the nations who judged you. You made that promise in Jeremiah 25 and 29. And the 70 years can be viewed as prospective or retrospective, and both interpretations at the same time fit together as 140 years, which is indeed the time that went out between 586 BC and when Nehemiah goes back to rebuild the walls in what is probably 444, or 446, not 444. I've got to still hone that down. Okay? So there you go. Now, there's one other thing I got to cover in this. All right. This is more about how he's going to judge the other nations. You can read this yourself. When he says, I will bring peace, peace and prosperity have the same meaning in both Hebrew and in Greek. In Greek, it's more got a concept of reconciliation. But in Hebrew, shalom means prosperity, and that's why it's peace. You have prosperity due to peace, okay? Two sides of the same coin. Okay. What are these? He's got 4 horns. These are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Okay. And then the Lord shows me 4 craftsmen. These are the horns that scattered Judah. No man lifts up his head, blah, blah, blah. The craftsmen have come to terrify them. Okay. This is going to be, all right, Greece splitting into 4 parts. Okay. I don't know. It's also based on Daniel. Okay, you have Greece splitting into 4 parts. The Greeks formed 4 spheres of influence. You had Ptolemy, Seleucus, and I forget the other 2 guys' name, Lycus, and I forget the other guy's name. Okay, they're going to end up, basically taking over. They're going to end up punishing the nations that punished Israel, and then of course they themselves, Seleucus in particular, his son Antiochus IV, is going to take over and hurt Israel, and then he's going to be hurt by madness in return, and then that's going to actually foster the saving of Israel under the Maccabees by 141 BC. Okay, and that's covered in the Book of Maccabees, and that's also covered in Daniel 7 and 8. But that's what this is referencing. He's reminding them of Daniel. It's not something separate, and it's not, new horns or any of the other stuff that some goofballs come up with. It's just a reference to Daniel, okay? Because they had Daniel. All right? Now we got one more little thing. How much time do I have? I'm already at 10 minutes. 18 minutes. Yuck. Okay. See, he's just listing his visions at this point. This is a summary. 8th month, the thing that mattered is what he said 2 months after they got their approval, trying to remind them, okay, of Daniel. He's reminding them of Daniel. He's reminding them of the trend of history. Because with Daniel, he saw the whole trend of history. Okay, he's telling them where history's going. He's basically saying that the temple is the cause of the rest of history. That's what he told Daniel, and that's what he's now, through Zechariah, reminding Zerubbabel. Now that theme is going to continue in Zechariah. That's his main theme. Okay. This, when it says to measure Jerusalem and see how wide and long it is, this is to measure for a foundation, to measure for the dimensions of a city before you build it. Okay, city planning, good city planning, you scope out some blank territory that doesn't have anything on it, and you plan all your roads and your buildings and your shops and the whole thing. That's what was done to Washington, D.C. It's the same kind of idea. Okay? What he's trying to say is that this is the millennial Jerusalem. He's leading into the millennial. Because what he's doing when he does this, and the reason he's giving it to Zerubbabel is he's told Zerubbabel he's going to be seed of Christ. So now he's building on what he told Daniel, laying out the rest of history. Okay? And that matters a lot because there are stupid, incompetent so-called scholars who claim that Daniel was written around 167. That's a bunch of baloney. Zechariah lived like 300 years prior to that, so did Haggai. And they're all quoting Daniel. Okay, they're using Daniel. And I could spend more time on this, but you know what? There are only so many hours in a day. Okay? Just pay close attention to the wording and notice that the wording is the same in Daniel. And you'll just laugh at the people who claim, oh, that Chaldean in Daniel is too young. It is not. Chaldean changed a whole lot between 167. In fact, there wasn't anybody who spoke it. And back when Daniel was writing, and it's not like Aramaic. They're 2 different languages. People are really stupid. I mean, there's a huge difference between Aramaic of the 1st century or the 2nd century or the 3rd century BC and Daniel's. It's not really Aramaic. It's Chaldean. So I don't even want to get involved in that. Incompetence. But you don't even have to get into that argument with them. Just look at the incorporation by reference of what Daniel says. They're quoting him. All right. So then we get here. Now this is the most important part of it. Then he showed me Yeshua, the high priest. Do you remember back in Haggai? Okay. Who was he talking to? Haggai to Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, who at that time was still governor. Okay. And who? Yeshua, the son of the high priest. At that time, he was the son of the high priest. But in Zechariah, he is now the high priest. So apparently his dad died. Okay, between the 7th month? Because he's talking to all the priests in the 9th month. So between the 7th month and the 9th month, he's now the high priest. The son is now the high priest. And this is the one, where remember it plays on the unclean. He's playing on unclean. You're all unclean. Where was that? I was way back here. Okay. Where was it? There we go. So is this people, everybody's unclean. Alright, so, playing on that. See, Zechariah is playing on Haggai. Haggai is playing on Zechariah. Take your pick. Okay. Joshua the high priest. Now, that's one person, right? Joshua is one person. That's not too hard to understand, right? Remove the filthy garments. He's playing on unclean from Haggai. Because Zechariah is doing this, talking in the 11th month after Haggai. So he's reminding Israel about the unclean thing he said. About the difference between holy meat and the fold of your garment. Alright? And he's giving him further encouragement on that same theme. Put a clean turban on his head. Okay? Because this is his own way of ordaining the new high priest. Okay? That's a very particular person. For behold, I'm going to bring in my servant the branch. And we just saw at the end of in Haggai too. Zerubbabel is going to be the progenitor of who? The branch. You with me on that? Alright, so now, we got this guy. Angel, what do you see? I see a lampstand. Okay? This is the famous lampstand verse that everybody misuses. This is the word of the Lord to who? The other guy. Zerubbabel. We got Joshua here. See? Chapter 3, Joshua, playing on unclean that we saw in Haggai. Okay? Prophecy that. Listen, Joshua. Therefore a symbol, because I'm going to bring in who? The branch. That's Christ. We all know that. Okay, and the progenitor of Christ? Word to Zerubbabel saying, not by might or power, but by my spirit. Again, playing on unclean. What are you, great mountain? Before Zerubbabel, seed of Christ, instead of being seed of Baal, you will become a plain, you will flatten. See, that plays back again to Haggai. Okay? Back to Haggai. I'm going to overthrow everybody. Well, then you're going to see Mary change this. Instead of overthrow, she uses the word lower. It's really clever. It does mean make lower. Okay, so she's playing also on Zechariah, who says, all right, O great mountain, before Zerubbabel, her progenitor, you will become a plain, you will become lower. And you will bring the top stone with shouts of grace to it. See, Christ is the chief cornerstone, capping off the whole purpose of the temple. See, he's still talking about the temple and the fact that you got one guy, Joshua, who was the same guy that was addressed in Haggai 1:1, and then we got hands of Zerubbabel, seed of Christ, have laid the see how the stress, laid the foundation of this house. His hands will finish it, then you will know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. Because they felt the temple was small. But these seven what? The seven spirits of God. Okay? And there were 7 people. Okay? That were their friends. But the whole idea of the 7 spirits of God is something everybody knows. But it's talking about what? It's talking about a person who's alive at the time getting this message. The message is intended for him. Here's the second person alive getting the message intended for him, because he's the progenitor of the branch. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation and will finish it. Okay, so, hello. Is this too hard to understand? Then I said to him, what are these 2 olive trees? What are these 2 olive branches inside the 2 golden pipes, which emptying the gold from themselves? And he answered, do you not know? How can you not know? Here's one. And here's the other. Okay, we're going to circle back a little bit on Zechariah. I want to make a couple of corrections, and then I want to show you the style of scripture quoting that Mary and Zecharias are going to use, so that you can appreciate and enjoy it, and also see the depthness of their understanding. But first, let's make some corrections. When I had covered Zechariah 1:8, I made a comment about how it didn't seem right to me that this was read and this was read, and I thought it was a mistranslation. Fortunately, I get bugged when I don't do my own homework, and so now I'm going to do it. On the left-hand side, as you can see, is Zechariah 1:8, and this means read. We're going to go through that a little bit, and this means read. The other mistake I made, and these are proper translations, is what I'm trying to get at. And then this word sorrel here doesn't mean brown, it means dappled gray. And then this, yes, is white, all right? But there is a mistranslation in this verse. But in order to explain it, we got to go to the right-hand side of the screen. This passage is pretty familiar to many, and it's been taught many, many times, reasonably correctly. But the larger meaning, this is one of the problems in teaching, and I can't really fault the teachers for that. One of the problems in teaching is that when we go to our pulpits and we learn Bible, we end up getting either a syrupy version of the Bible or a very shallow version. Our theology is extremely childish. Okay, our theologies about God and what the Bible actually says are very much oriented to body and morality and all kinds of childish notions. See, when you're a baby, you're preoccupied with your poo-poo, you're preoccupied with your body. Your brain isn't developed, so you don't have a higher, sense of things and interests. Okay, so children tend to be interested in childish things, which tend to be, how they feel, and sweet and sour, and, very, narrow-minded kind of concepts. And our theologies are like that too. So are our translations, so are our teachings. So here, the typical thing that's taught, and it isn't wrong, it's just too small. Okay? oh, these are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, sort of. Okay? And when my pastor went through Revelation verse by verse, exegeting every verse in the Greek, during the very years that Edward P.F. 123 claimed to be there but never learned Greek under my pastor, that's how you know he's lying. And you can get these classes, by the way, free on MP3. You can hear them live. Same classes that I heard when I was sitting there. This, when he exegeted it, he said, this is a dramatic depiction, which it is. Excuse me, popcorn problem again. This is a dramatic depiction of the trends of history. Okay? White horse, that's the idea, it's very common even in our own literature, the idea of a white horse. The king rides the white horse, runs into town to, take over the town. And everybody cheers him because he's a good king. The white horse also designates good ruler. And then you got the red horse, and that's war, That, by the way, the word red in Greek is the Greeks' renaming of the Reed Sea, which is now, in our parlance, the Red Sea. That was a Greek renaming, and they renamed it because of the war of Pharaoh trying to chase the Israelites. It's the Greeks who gave it that name, not the Christians, not the Jews. Okay? And red in, Greek literature has always signified, a red horse always signifies red from blood, or red color like blood, or red color specifically like fire. There's the Greek word for red. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Fire, it literally means fiery. Okay? And so that's depicting war, judgments, a horse you can't stop because he's on fire. Fast. It's got all those, metaphorical connotations. And then you got black, and that's famine. You would expect it to be death, but it's famine. See, this is I'll never forget when he was doing this. A quart of wheat for a denarius was a whole day's wages. So if all you can get is a quart of wheat, which is less than a daily supply of food for a hardworking guy that's working 16 hours that day or 12 hours that day, that's unbelievably expensive. And only 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages? But the oil and wine weren't going to be damaged. This is all future in the tribulation. But the horses are, as it were, depictions of divine judgment ruling on how history down on earth is going to go. And that's a common theme of Greek culture too, and probably others around the world. All right? So you got conquering, okay? You got war. You got, where is it? Famine, scarcity, inflation. Think of all those concepts, because what he's depicting here is excessively high prices for basic goods. Okay, do not damage oil and wine means that they will not be affected in the tribulation. In other words, they'll be at the right price, which is very kind when you consider how mankind uses oil and wine. And then ashen. This word ashen, that's a pretty good translation, actually. I should use that. Go here. It means gray. But ashen is whoever translated that word really had a sense of what it was trying to say. That's the color of death in Greek culture. Okay, it isn't black. Okay, I guess it depends on when in Greek time. But ashen, because that's the color of a person who's dead. That's where it's coming from. Okay, so this word sorrel could be interpreted as death. All right? And the word for sorrel, okay. The word for sorrel that's being used, there you go, sarok. All right? And it's translated here with this word, saroi. It's like a transliteration of the Hebrew. Okay? See? And that's where I got to get to next. That's sorrel. Okay, you can see in the lower left window. And it's transliterated saroi. PS sound. Saroi. Okay? So ashen is a good translation. Now over here on the right hand side though, okay, the word for ashen is more like green, and that's another color of death if you're sick. Okay? Chloros. You know, Constantine's dad was called Chloros. So you got really, ashen really isn't a good translation for that afterwards. See, I blew it in. Okay, okay, think of bleach. It's got a pale green cast to it, pale green blue, okay? That's not the same color as this one. So there is a difference between, this is the more sophisticated thing that we ought to be paying attention to. There is a difference between the kinds of historical trends being depicted by the colors of the horses here versus the colors of the horses here. There's a similarity, there's an overlap, but it's not the same. Okay? This is pale green, sickly, and yeah, there's an ashenness to it, but ashen doesn't necessarily bring out sickness as well as pale. Constantine Paleface was the nickname of Constantine the Great's dad. All right, so that's going to be kind of important to go through. But the other thing that I want to focus on is the plurals. This is not just one. This is what alerted me to it. You have red here, and that's really what it means, is puroi, and red here. Okay? And that's what you see in the lower left-hand corner, Adom. That really is red. That's where Adam comes from. Adam means red man, earth man. Okay? Earth man would be a really good translation, because he made Adam from the earth, and the earth has a sort of reddish color to it. Okay, that's where Adam comes from, and that's where Edom comes from, because Esau was ruddy. He, had a ruddy complexion. He was hairy. Esau means hairy. Okay, Hairy. All right. So, but the thing is that and it's literally translated here. That's a plural. That's a plural. Okay. That's a plural. And there are plurals here too. See, that's a plural. That's a plural. And where's the first one? It was up here somewhere. That's Zeus. Well, there's one red horse there. That's the first one. Okay. The man riding on a red horse is the guy in charge, and that's a depiction of Christ. Okay. But behind him were red sorrel and white horses. What were the other? Here's Edomim. Those are the red. Sarokim. And Lebanim. Okay, that's white. Pale. So you can see where they're getting the word pale from in Revelation. But that's not that color here. This is lukoi. That's white for conquering. All right. This is, instead of dappled, they have many colored. Okay, so it could be many kinds, but it's probably the color, because that fits the syntax. I mean, the metaphors that he's using for the other colors. All right. And this is our word for red. But these are all plural. So what it means is, it took too long to say it. What it means is that you only got 4 here. See, because Zechariah is going to later talk about the 4 horns and the 4 craftsmen, and he's playing to Daniel. Okay, when Daniel was talking about it. And so is John here in Revelation, but there's only 4. This isn't only 4. It's 4 types of multiple horses. This is puroi, not just pur, us. All right? It's hippoi, yeah, but you wouldn't. But if it was just one horse that was red, this wouldn't be a plural. See, look, this is puron, hippon puron, one red horse. If this was just one more red horse, it would be hippoi, and then there'd probably be a genitive of puras. But there isn't. That's a plural nominative. So there are more than one red horse in the background, more than one speckled starling, speckled sorrel horse in the background, more than one multicolored horse, according to the Greek text here, and more than one white horse. Now, what does that mean? See, this is a literature. We have to understand that this is a literary expression here. People lived on this stuff. They didn't have TV for entertainment. Okay? So what they did is they used colorful depictions that would make it more memorable, instead of just telling you the boring straight, okay, I saw 4 horses, these were their colors. That's not very memorable. But if you like in reading a novel, if you make it dramatic, then it's more memorable, and then afterwards you ponder the truth behind it. Okay, so that's why this is like a little TV program, like a tableau on stage. Behold, look, here's a man riding on a red horse. We've made thousands of movies of these horsemen. Of course, but we don't understand that there are multiple horses of each color behind him. Multiple horses. Why? Because the trends of history are going to keep on happening. This is judgment from God, trends of history. You got 2 kinds of judgment from God, basically. The first kind is God's going to let what you're doing to yourself happen, the consequences, let you get the consequences of your own decision. And the other basic, oversimplifying it, class of judgment is where God is going to do it to you. Okay? And that's basically running throughout the Old Testament. Okay, historical trends are sort of an amalgam of God's order about what has to happen to keep mankind free from, his own folly, and the natural product, the free product of man's own folly. See, God takes what we do and he uses it to still produce justice just the same. And a lot of that justice means that our bad decisions come back to bite us. And when you have a large swatch of territory with millions of people in it, all of them making bad decisions, that's when the horses start to ride. And the bad decision in question here in Zechariah 1 is a bad decision of being anti-Semitic. And I don't know if you've taken much of a look at history, but every nation that in the past has been anti-Semitic is not much to look at today. Okay, it's like they've never recovered. I can't even think of one that's doing well. And by contrast, the nations that have reverted, that used to be anti-Semitic and have now changed their mind and are pro-Israel, or at least neutral, they do better economically. Analyze the history yourself. So that applies on an individual level, which of course we know from Genesis 12, 15, and 17, but it also applies on a national level. And of course this is one of the prophecies about how it applies on a national level. All right? Because he says, I was mad at Jerusalem for a little bit, but boy, oh boy, am I mad at the people who her. So my horsemen are going to ride against those nations. And we covered in the video, who he was riding against. So anyway, this probably took too long, but that side light on the horses I had to cover. Sorry it took so long.